This index and quick links page is designed to get you straight to the point you want to get to in this video. The inventory column on the left and the assembly column on the right. Just click the link and you go straight to that section. Enjoy our video.
Hello, my name's Neil and I work for Eco Repair Systems and Eco Express Body Repair Centres. The purpose of the video today is to show you how to construct a trolley or a cart for a Flatliner system. We've unwrapped package number 1. This is the largest of the two square packages, and in there you'll find 2 trays, a set of hooks to hold your pull bars, 3 large mats and 2 small rubber mats which go inside the tray. Okay, there are 4 caster wheels, 2 are fixed and 2 are directional, and one of those has a brake. You will also find a retaining hook to take your flex or cable, a handle and a selection of nuts and bolts. Okay, this is package number 2. What we need to do is take all the wrapping off of it, and we're going to use a safety cutter to ensure that we don't damage the panels and also cut ourselves with a sharp blade. Okay, in package number 2 we have the following items. We have 2 side panels, one of which, if you notice, has a series of holes in the side which will be relevant later on. I'll explain that. These are basically to take a power unit if you're in the UK market, but they're not relevant if you're in the US market. We also have the 2 rear upper panels for holding the pull bars, and also the centre tray and the 4 retaining bars for the rear panels. Right, on the table now, spread out in front of me, is the entire contents of box number 3. And that consists of 2 bags of 100 keys, 1 containing twisted and 1 containing straight keys, 2 extension legs, a pair of short and a pair of long, 3 aluminium hammers, so there's 2 medium size and 1 small. There are a larger size available, but this is the kit that comes as standard, and both of these have got different profiles. One runs horizontal, one runs top to bottom. A set of 6 high tensile pulling bars, 1 FL80 bar with the attachments to take the actual centre pulling system and the legs, 1 FL120 bar with attachments again either end, a pair of single feet legs for the FL80 and a pair of double feet legs for the FL120. We've also got 2 pulling systems, 1 for each bar. Right, next step, we're going on to all the working parts now that that go with the Flatliner. So box number 4 contains our inner puller assembly, which is the inner puller itself and the cable, and then all the accessories that go with it. Right, here before me is the contents of box number 4, which consists of the inner puller, the T-bar and the cable, and the accessories that go with the T-bar and cable. That is a small slide hammer, we've got the attachment for welding our keys on, a pole shrinking head, and the retaining collar for the small slide hammer. Okay, the next step is to remove the T-bar and cable from the inner puller. This is very simple. All we do is remove that spring, or take the pressure off the spring, and then undo the collar. Important that we do that, otherwise the collar will just fire off. Release the tension off the spring, slide out the T-bar. We now have all the separate components. Right, box number 5. In this box we'll find the large slide hammer, the large slide hammer cable, and all the accessories that go with it. So, one slide hammer, one slide hammer cable, one carbon shrink rod holder, pole shrinking tip, and Allen key. So finally we come to the contents of box number 6, which we've already unpacked. In box number 6 you will find the Digispot, which is the heart of the Flatliner system, and its user manual, and also a wiring diagram for the plugs, which is for the UK European market. The first step in constructing our car or trolley is to put the wheels on the main base unit. The first thing that I've done is separated the nuts and bolts into the smaller 10mm for the wheels, and then the 13mm for the rest of the trolley. Okay, as we said earlier, we have 2 fixed wheels which will go on one end of the rectangular shaped trolley, and 2 directional wheels which will go on the other end. It is important that the 2 directional wheels go on the same end. It doesn't matter which side the brake goes on, either or works just the same. Okay, the other thing to remember is the direction of the wheel is going to run to the short side of the trolley. Now we've got the wheels in place, all the screws and the nuts are hand tightened. We're now going to tighten them up using a cross-headed screwdriver on the outside and a 10mm socket and wrench on the inside. You can see we've now fitted the 4 wheels, and we have the 2 directional ones on the same side and the 2 fixed ones on the same end as well. Now this will run left to right, with the directional ones allowing you to manoeuvre the cart about. Now these directional ones are quite important and relevant to the next stage. We're going to put the sides on now, and it is important that you put the right side to the wheels. I've got nuts and bolts, the 13mm nuts and bolts to hand. and a cross-headed screwdriver. This is just going to aid me to locate the holes. Okay, now we're ready to put this side on. First thing I want to do is to put on the brake. Just by pressing down, and that will hold it rigid and stop it moving around. I'm going to take a handful of bolts and place them where I can get my hands on them, and the same with my screwdriver. Okay, this is the side panel that's going on first, and you can see these two holes on the top are for the handle, and that is relevant because the handle will enable you to push and manoeuvre the lower cart around on the side of the movable wheels. So the first thing I'm going to do is locate this side piece, slot my screwdriver through the hole to give it some support, and then take a couple of bolts, insert them in the lower end, and now I can put my nuts on. Step 2 is to put the other side on. Now this is the side with the fixed wheels, and that side is relevant to the side that has all the extra holes. Now again, these are obsolete if it's the US market. For the UK market, this will take the control box. These holes should be to the top of the side. If they're at the lower part, you're not going to have enough holes to locate it on the sides, and it will be facing the wrong way. So repeating the process. Now I've got both sides fitted, and if you notice all the nuts and bolts are still loose. That will be the very last job, is to tighten everything up. So when we know it all fits and it's all square, that's the time we do that job. But the next one next job is to fit the centre tray. What we have to do is slide the tray down between the two sides, then place the screwdriver in the holes to locate it, whilst pushing the screws in either side. Okay, once we've got these bolts located, we're only going to put a nut on the two outer bolts. Our next job is to fit the rear support bars. You have two on each side. This is the upper one, which has the threads and the block on the end, and this is the lower one with the two holes that bolt into the blocks, and also the two recessed holes there which actually locate on the cart itself. So we're going to push a 13mm bolt so the threads come out that end, and then put it into the cart on the rear side so that it goes through the tray as well as the outer side piece. Right, I'm just going to turn the cart round now. So this is the front end. We know this is the front because the handles on the top here, the holes for the handles, are on the same end as the rotational wheels. And this end is the fixed end, and the holes to take the hook and the power unit are up the top. Okay, so I'm now going to take a lower bar, and we know it's the lower bar because it's got the two larger holes on the outer side of it and the two smaller holes on the inner side. I shall now remove that nut, bolt that hasn't got a nut on, and place it through the hole there. Line up these two holes, push it through, and place a nut and washer on the back. And I should also repeat exactly the same the opposite side. Just a tip, if you put your finger on the back of that hole and then place the bolt through so that your finger's supporting it, and then push it through. Okay, fitting the junction box is a simple procedure. All you really need to know is where the rear of the cart is and where the rear of the box is. We know this is the rear of the cart because this is where our supports are for the back bars or back plates. On the back of the junction box you have your 16 amp commando connector which the DigiSpot plugs into. So this is the rear of the box, this is the rear of the cart. The four holes that we have on the side of the cart are to take this box, and it's just a case of offering it up into position and placing our nuts and bolts in the slots and bolting it up tight. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, again, we've already fit the power box, and remember this is for the UK and European market only. The US market, this is all irrelevant. It doesn't come supplied with this as there's no use for it. Okay, so that's fitted or not. The next job is to fit our hook. Now this fits directly behind the power box. At this point, using a 13mm socket and a cross-headed posi drive screwdriver, we're going to tighten these nuts and bolts up. This is the only time in the fit that we actually tighten up nuts and bolts prior to the finishing of the assembly. So that also includes the nuts and bolts for the power box. It's just that it makes it a whole lot easier to do this now before we put the top tray on. Okay, our next step is to fit the top tray. We call it a tray, but in fact it's actually a shelf, if you like, because the top surface is going to go uppermost. So this is underneath, that's on the top. Now the important thing is, remember we spoke about the holes for the handles that are in the end? These now line up with the holes on the side of the cart here, if you can see those. If you remember from the conversation earlier, this top tray has holes in the ends that line up with the holes in the sides for the handle. So this is how we know which side this goes around. It's important you put it that way around. Obviously you won't be able to fit the handle and then you'll have to dismantle the top. Okay, so I've got my 2 bolts locating the front edge, screwdriver through to support this end, and nothing on this end, but that's fine because now we're going to locate one of our support rear bars. So we lift that up. We lift this up and place the bolt through the hole, line up the top tray and locate, and put the nut on the back. And then we repeat the process for this side. Take our bolt, locate the bolt, remove our screwdriver, line everything up, slot into place, and then place our nut on the back. Okay, the next job is to fit the handle. Now these take 2 30mm hexagon headed bolts. All the other bolts are round with a posi drive or Phillips head in them. These are the only 2 in the kit, so you know they fit in the handle. One thing to note about this handle as well, they don't always line up. That's because of the way that they're put together. They just slot on the ends and you have to adjust them to fit. So we've now got our 2 nuts, or bolts rather, and we'll just twist, push in until the bolts line up, push them through, and then nuts on the back. It's interesting to note as well that you will have to tighten these nuts up using a spanner, as there are already a bolt in the way, so there's not enough room there to fit in a wrench or a socket. So we're using a spanner to tighten up the nuts on the back of the handle, as you can see there's 2 nuts and bolts there, and accessibility is limited with a socket and a wrench. Right, we've now reached quite an important milestone in the construction of this car. What we need to do now is take our lower back plate. There's 2 back plates and they stack on top of each other. All we're going to do is slot this on to these supports. That will enable us to see whether it's square or not. If they slot on, great, it's square. If they don't, we need to adjust the cart around so that it fits. Okay, now we've got this top plate on. Bearing in mind the squares to the right as you look at the back of the cart, we know it's all square. This fits and it's nice and square. So the next job now is to tighten up all of the nuts and bolts. And once we've tightened all these nuts and bolts up, we can then take the trolley, put it on the floor and finish off the assembly. All we need, 13mm socket and a posi drive or cross-headed screwdriver. One thing to bear in mind as well, when we come to tighten the handle and the nut and bolt to the side of the handle, we need to use a 13mm spanner because the accessibility is limited behind there. Now the final part to assembly is to put the last back plate on, and then all the ancillaries like your rubber mats and the 2 trays that go down there, and that's the finishing touches before we get on to all the components like the pull bars, etc. So to fit these, we're just going to swivel the trolley round. Now that slots into there like that. Into there like, and we put the remaining bolts into these 2 fixings. Now they're secure, the 2 upper supporting bars, we can now slide on the last of the back trays. If you notice, I don't know if you can see, they come without the Flatliner sticker on there, but you will put that on prior to putting this last plate on. But there are 4 square holes here which take hooks from behind, so these need to be on the lower part of the tray. The trolley's all assembled now. We're just going to put our mats on, and also take this opportunity, take the cable and just hang it off by a cable hook. We've already got the lower mat on, one in the middle. And we can place our 2 trays on the centre, and then the 2 mats that go with the trays. Last but not least, mat on the top. You'll see there's a little lip on the bottom of this lower back plate, and that mat will sit underneath. Right, next step is to put all our hooks on there for our pull bars and our hammers. Okay, preparation for the hook. If you see there's a grub screw which is going to locate it and tighten it into position, what we need to do is unscrew the hook until that's flush. And the reason for that is it will allow us to slot that on, and then we tighten it up into position. Okay, now we've put our hooks on, we've got, if you note, we've got the 2 larger double hooks to the right hand side and the shorter double hook to the left as you face the trolley, and then single hooks in each corner. These top ones are going to take the longer of the 2 bars, the FL120 and the FL80 will sit on the lower bar. That leaves us with 2 hooks which go on here but from behind. So we put these on behind, and they can you can either hang cables off of those, or if you bought the longer commercial bar that is also available, you can hang that off the back. And same thing, we screw it up with our cross-headed or Phillips screwdriver. Now we've spread out the contents of box number 3, we've removed all the parts that are just going to sit on the trolley and left ourselves with the pulling bridges that we need to assemble. Now these are the only parts in that box that need to be assembled. They both very similar. Slight difference in the legs, like the longer bar has a double pad, and the short bar, the FL80, has a single pad. Okay, so we have a pulling system that goes in the centre of the bar. The first thing we need to do is wind the handle away from the thread. And then repeat that step for the pulling system on the FL120. We're going to start off with the assembly of the FL80. Now, on either end of the bar itself are the blocks that actually take the legs. So for the FL80, as I said earlier, we have the single leg, single foot on this leg. So if we remove the nut from the top, if you know, on the top is a machined foot. Right, putting the leg onto this end, as you can see, there are some machined recesses in the block itself. The leg slides in the top, and you can also see that the machined parts on the leg itself locate into those recesses. We can also remove it, turn it 90 degrees and lock it in again. That changes the angle of the foot. And then we place our nut on the top and tighten up. These legs are now fully adjustable. The next step is to place our pulling system in the centre. We need to remove the hook off the bottom, making sure that the bearing, we can see here, does not fall off the thread. Important thing to take note is in the block, the centre block itself, you'll see a grub screw. That is on the other end of a keyway which slots into the keyway on the thread. So we have to make sure that it's lined up. Using a flat-headed screwdriver, we need to rotate that in or out so that the screw head is flush with the block and the slot is located top to bottom. That will enable us to slide that through. We then place our hook on the bottom of the thread and we screw it a few turns till it's tight and then turn it back one whole turn, and that's where it will stay, and that will allow flexibility on the end. Okay, as you can see, bar is all assembled. We just check that it all moves, which it does. We can now place it on the trolley. And we'll repeat the steps for the FL120. Right, here before me is the contents of box number 4, which consists of the inner puller, the T-bar and the cable, and the accessories that go with the T-bar and cable. That is a small slide hammer. We've got the attachment for welding our keys on, a pole shrinking head, and the retaining collar for the small slide hammer. Okay, the next step is to remove the T-bar and cable from the inner puller. This is very simple. All we do, we'll take the pressure off the spring and then undo the collar. Important that we do that, otherwise the collar will just fire off. Release the tension off the spring, slide out the T-bar. We now have all the separate components. The wing nut, make sure that it slides in and out, which it does. Normally when it's in use we'll just tighten this up and that's ready to go. We'll take the carbon shrink rod retaining bracket, also do the same with that, check that it slides in and out, and our pole shrinking head. That all fits. Next step is we'll take our carbon shrink rod and our carrier, undo the Allen key, slot the rod in there and tighten up. So just nip that up tight. And then make sure that it is tight in there. So that's ready to go. It's important that this goes in there and not used directly in the head itself, because when you tighten that bolt down on it, being carbon, it will just break and crumble, and then you'll have bits and pieces stuck inside the handle. What we'll do now is just put all the components on the trolley and finish it off.